maybe to your beginnings in a way concerning the, for example, CGI, visual effects, because this film is CGI pretty heavy. There are a lot of visual effects. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there was quite... my favourite kind of special effect is one you can't see. So there's quite a lot of it in that film.
Yeah, but the one when you blow the O'Neill's head
up, yeah, that's just the show-offy stuff.
Yeah.
The real stuff is the kind of painting out of stuff in the background, and the whole battle sequence at the beginning wasn't real either. The pikes and all that was all put in post, which is, you know, yeah, the head blowing up stuff is more, you know, your old school Cronenberg, you know, body horror stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and also it's like also the sound design, because if we compare your films like Down Terrace, Kill List, and Sightseers, which the audience will be able to see here in a few days, you started with Down Terrace, which is pretty much like also low budget one, but it's the sound design is like documentary in a way, you know. But this one is there is really an emphasis on sound design.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first film I made, I wasn't really, to be honest, that involved in the sound mix, because it just the way that it turned out. The dark secret is I wasn't in the country when it got mixed, so it was. That was done, you know, the direction for that was just very minimal and very, as you say, documentary. But when I did the mix for Kill List was the first time I kind of started to think about 5.1 and surround sound. And then every movie since then has become increasingly more complicated in terms of the surround sound design. And I just love surround sound, and it doesn't really get used that much, I don't think. You know, the weird thing about surround sound is that the only time you really hear it is when you see the logos at the beginning of a DVD, or when you go to the cinema and it says, you know, Lucas Sound or whatever, and it swoops around you, and then you don't really get it. And I wondered why that was, you know, and so, you know, unless a helicopter goes over, you don't generally hear it. But I found, to my dismay, that when you really do a lot of 5.1 design, and then you take your film and you show it in lots of different cinemas, it never sounds the same twice. And sometimes the 5.1 isn't even turned on, you know, properly, or the speakers are blown. And that's why at the end of this movie, if you see the other films, like the end of Kill List, the end of Sightseers, and the end of Field in England, have the same sounds on the last bit of the credit roller. And it's this kind of swooping noise that goes, and we put that on so that we can check the 5.1 in the cinemas. And if it goes wop, it means that some of the speakers are down. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Talking about your films, I mean, in general, coming out of the Field in England. My question is, do you shoot your films in chronological order, or you just, you know, seeing this scene, that scene, and then you just edit it up?
Since Kill List, they have been, and it hasn't been a conscious plan. It's just the way it's happened. But we've been very lucky that, you know, it's a major luxury to shoot in chronological order, because usually you can't do it because of the way you book the actors, and they can only go for a certain amount of days. But artistically, it makes a massive difference to shoot that way, because I think it's Ken Loach. I was reading a Ken Loach interview, and he said basically he always shoots in chronological order, so the actors don't have to pretend to have the memories of what they're trying to remember. I think that's very clever, you know. So they don't have to act so much; they actually can remember what they did because you've done it in the right order.
Yeah, that's the point. For example, with the Field in England, they start quite clean in a way, but then it's dirtier and dirtier, you know. But if you have to kind of stick to the kind of a timeline, you know, in a way that now he's dirty and then he's not. Of course, you wouldn't do that. But
I think the dirtiness of them is the least of the trouble in that film. You know, I think it's more that it's the emotional journey that they go on. It would be very difficult to, or it would be much harder to map if we did it out of order. I mean, even down to the fact that they go back to the hedge at the end. We didn't shoot that at the same time as we shot the beginning of the film. We went back to that location and shot that end bit, because the way that the state that Reece Shearsmith was in by the time we'd finished the movie was you couldn't have predicted it. They all went through a little bit of a breakdown doing the movie, and you know, and that shows on their faces.
Because it's more or less looks the same, but it's not.
Well, it's a totally different day. I mean, it's
Yeah.
different weather for starters, which is, you know, it was absolutely pissing down when we shot the beginning stuff, and that was a really beautiful day. But it's more that Reese is a weird actor in the respect that his face seems very different all the time. You know, you see in that movie, he's kind of unrecognisable at the end from the beginning, as far as I'm concerned. And I feel that when I see his TV work, it took me a long time to work out that it was the same guy playing all the different characters in League of Gentlemen, the TV show he was in. I was quite surprised by that, but he's quite a comedian like that.
Yeah. Talking about comedians, is it an intent, or I'll say, like, where did you get the idea to cast comedians? I mean, comedic actors not only in this, because you have Michael Smiley, who is a comedic actor or started it, you know, in Space. You have Reese Shearsmith, and in previous films as well. I mean, Richard Glover, I think his name is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in previous, like in Down Terrace, you have Julia Deakin and all these. These are comedians, but they are playing serious roles.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of started practically because I'd made a lot of comedy TV, so I only really knew comic actors in a way. So there was that, but also the thing is about people who have done stand-up comedy, who've gone on stage and made jokes and written their own material and then have failed, which inevitably all stand-ups do at the start. They have a certain amount of soul about them that, you know, it's harder to find maybe in performers who haven't created their own material. And I think that also that they have to think on their feet a lot more, because you don't get heckled so much in the theatre. You get heckled when you do stand-up. And I like to use a lot of improvisation, though there wasn't any in Field in England, but in the other movies. And I think that if you've got comedic actors, they know that they've done a lot of improvisation, so they're loose in that respect. And also, I don't know, I kind of wanted a part of the realism, of trying to find realism in performances, is that people are made of light and dark, you know, and there's a lot of humour in life. And when you see movies that are very dour and no one makes any jokes and there's the characters literally don't have a sense of humour, it feels very unrealistic. And casting people with a strong sense of humour helps balance that out.
Yeah, because it's like, even if it's a serious film, from time to time the humour, pitch black humour, but it seeps through. You can feel like the scene when the character of Richard Glover was dying and he was saying like a regular scene in film, he's dying and please give a message to my wife. Tell her I hate her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that in general life is pretty funny, and I think that film should reflect that. But life is serious too. You know? It's a mixture of the both.
Yeah.
Fighting.
Why did you decide to? What is the inspiration to use these tableaus, these live action freeze frames in the film? They are really beautiful and at the same time extremely fun, especially one when Whitehead was inspecting his private parts.
His cock.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it had come out originally in the script. There was ideas of using woodcuts and illustrations that look like period illustrations, and then that kind of mutated into this kind of tableau vivant idea, because and also we had this idea that it kind of existed in a time that, because the film was made before cinema was invented, that you could play with the actual of the language of cinema in itself, and maybe if a film had been made then that's the kind of thing they might have done. That was the kind of thinking behind it, and yeah, and it just felt like it was part of this idea as well that we were having, that you just didn't, the audience, as an audience member, you were just trying to unpack and trying to understand what the culture was that you were dealing with. When you see something as odd as that, but then done in such a committed way, you think there's something going on, but you don't understand what it is, and I think that's an interesting position to be in, and that's what a lot of the film feels like to me.
If we have a look at your films, the place of the shoot or place of the film where the film takes place is quite important. It's not a soundstage, it's not a stage. But for example, you started with Down Terrace, which was only one house. it all mostly took place in a house. Then Kill List, okay, it started in a house, but then you went out, and the corridors and tunnels were kind of important in a way. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Sightseers, you just went out again, you know, just doing a tour through England. And in Field England, you went into the field again. So, is it important for you to shoot your films like which have the real feeling, you know, feeling of the place, like, for example, this kind of a physical cinema, like Werner Herzog, or is it intent, or just it happened that way?
I think that the field in England movie is different from the others in that, well, it's kind of closer to Down Terrace in the respect that we knew that we had a limitation, and the limitation was the budget. And so we usually start from the money and then work backwards to work out what kind of movie we're going to make, you know. And so there's no point, you know, writing about this incredible space opera with spaceships and, you know, CGI monsters and stuff that they fight if you've only got 300 grand to make it, because it's not going to happen. So that kind of is in the seed of it, and then you take that pragmatic approach, and it's the same with Down Terrace, where we knew we didn't have any money, but we knew we had a house, and then we wrote the script to fit the house, and this was the same thing. But with this one, it was Amy Jump who wrote it, was kind of thinking about that stuff like Dogville and like and Hitchcock stuff like the Lifeboat and Rope, you know, where he's kind of intentionally given himself a limitation and a space to work in. And then you use that limitation to work for you. In the same way we in Down Terrace, it was all in the house, so it was very claustrophobic, and the story had to reflect that. So that was the kind of feeling behind it. The Sightseers was different because it was literally a road trip, so we just went on the road and shot it. So that, you know, and it was dictated by real places, so that was just the way it was. And Kill List was a kind of a reaction to Down Terrace in terms of trying to get out of the house. So a third of it was in the house, and then the other 2/3 was on the road. But there was, again, it's a budgetary thing. So if you spend a third of the movie in the house, you can save quite a lot of money. Yeah. And as soon as you go out of the house, it starts costing loads more money. So that, you know, it's dull, but you have to take these things into consideration when you're constructing movies.
Yeah, a perfect example of kind of turning disadvantage into your advantage.
Yeah, I think
to be resourceful and kind of do it, because many times it happens that if you have a lot of money, it may spoil you concerning making a film. I mean,
I think you have to have a pragmatic view about stuff, and that way that you don't end up with something that should have cost a load of money, costing not very much money and looking cheap. You go at it exactly the resource that you've got, you know, and you're just pragmatic about it, and then you can't be disappointed or feel you're compromising the material because you know exactly what you wanted to do all along. So I'm as happy making stuff at very low budget as I am at high budget. It doesn't really matter to me in that respect, as long as there's enough money to make it in the first place. Yeah.
And I mean, when I saw this film for the first time, you know, I liked the idea, but I wasn't really sure what to think about it, about pulling a guy, you know, the O'Neill, from the field. I really thought that he was somewhere in the field, you know, and they pulled him out. Because the film, there are things which you have to realize that you cannot, in a way, grasp it, you know, in a rational way. So, is there an explanation? If you don't want to,
I mean, there's two explanations to that. One explanation is that we wanted to make a film that felt like you'd been transported back in time into a culture that you just didn't understand. You know.
Yeah. So I got that.
Yeah, you got that. That was good. So if you go to India or to China or somewhere and you don't read about anything about the culture there and you don't know the language, you're there and you're always behind it. No one will ever explain to you what the hell's going on. No one stops and goes, oh, this festival is about this, you know, or this, you know. And we wanted to do that in this film, where if you went back in time, no one would tell you what the context of the time was or what was actually going on in history. They'd talk about it, but they wouldn't explain it. But lots of movies do this because it's as a sop to the audience. But what ends up making the film is really unrealistic. You know, and then one of the examples we had for it was a film which I really like, but still is a Minority Report, where he's in the future, but Tom Cruise is always really fucking surprised about everything that happened. because it's like he's never seen it before. You go, oh my God, what is this? You know, you can read people's minds. You know, this car can drive without a driver. Well, it's like someone going up to a light switch and being surprised now, isn't it? It turns the lights on and off, you know, and I think that's what, you know, so there's lots of stuff in the movie that is like in field, which is like very researched historical stuff, which we just don't explain. But I think the feeling of being behind that information and not knowing it is more important than, you know, it's not a problem that if you don't know that history, because the history's obscure as all hell, you know. It's obscure to English people, not let alone anybody from outside of that culture. So going back to the rope thing, the other explanation for the rope thing is it was just something that we'd researched about folklore, and in Celtic folklore, if you have a mushroom circle, it's seen as a portal to a fairy world, and if you go inside the circle, then time moves at a different pace, and the only way out of the circle is by 4 men with a rope pulling you through it. So we took that and we used it, but in the film it doesn't work, and they get pulled in rather than pulling him out.
Oh, thank you.
My pleasure, that's why I'm here.
Yeah. Just a silly question. What kind of mushrooms were there? Like kind of from supermarket or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
they don't look, I mean...
They don't look like magic mushrooms, no.
Yeah, they don't...
They look like shiitake or...
Or, you know, this kind of a class, like we call it champignons.
Yeah.
Like,
basically, yeah, just bought from a supermarket. I think it would have been really bad to make our actors eat loads of psychedelic
they
mushrooms.
ate those mushrooms, yeah.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't have worked well. It's like when actors act drunk, they don't really drink. They just pretend.
Yeah, but I mean, so they were eating these raw mushrooms.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
he was stuffing himself.
Yeah. Which was, you know, what
it's not really. I mean, it's not really good for a stomach in a way, you know.
I think
even
to be fair, he was spitting them out. He wasn't swallowing them.
And but do these kind of mushrooms? I mean, not the fake ones.
The magic
the real ones. Do they grow in a field in England somewhere?
Yeah, all over England. Yeah.
In circles.
Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure they grow in circles so much, but they.
These kind of mushrooms which you had, I know that when I was a boy, we used to kind of go and pick these mushrooms. I'm not hallucinogenic, but the regular ones, champignons, and they were growing in, as we call it, like magic circles.
Yeah. Yeah, so you still get mushroom circles in the UK, and I think the magic mushrooms don't grow like that so much, but they might do, for the purposes of this.
Yeah, but, okay, as for the mushrooms, so let's go back to the actors that you kill in your films.
They don't really die though, they just...
I mean, I'm not that naive that I think that Michael Smiley died.
No.
And the others, they did, but they came back.
Yeah.
But concerning all their work, all their films, Down Terrace, Kill List, Sightseers, and Field in England, we have, for example, Tony Way. He wasn't in this film, but the audience will have an opportunity to see those films, so they will know what I'm talking about later. And there is a character which is played by Tony Way in both films, and he dies.
Yes.
In both your films, he plays only two of your films, but you kill him. Yeah. Michael Smiley, 3 films, you kill him in the end. Yeah. And, okay.
It's true. I can't deny it if there's evidence. But I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, why aren't there loads of movies made about like happy people doing nice stuff to each other, and you know, maybe a film about a man who grows a plant and he goes really well, and everyone's happy when they look at it. And the problem,
depends on the plant.
Yeah, but the thing is, what's missing from that is drama, you know. And I think you end up back at these plots with drama. It's the drama that drives it, you know. But also, I like genre films, so the kind of movies I watch are crime films and horror films and historical dramas with psychedelic mushrooms. Not that that's not a big genre, but so
it's like a subgenre like pothead western.
Yeah, basically, like Jodorowsky stuff. So, and you know, so I think one day we'll make a movie where no one dies.
Yeah, about the plant growing happily.
Yeah, I think so. Something nice.
Yeah, but it's
a harder thing to make. I think a film like that, because
slow motion.
Well, it's just it can be a bit boring, can't it? You know, no one dies. What's the point?
But if you let's skip the silly idea. Coming back to Michael Smiley, you know, you bring all the characters back to life, but you let him. You know, he's still dead.
Yeah.
So do you have anything against him, or?
No, that was just the story. No, well, he gets eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's consumed.
By the field.
No, by Maurice Smith.
But he was telling something about consuming all the evil of this field before that.
Yeah.
So maybe he became the field. Okay, that's too.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's too far out. Okay.
So your shopping list.
Yeah, I was preparing it for 2 weeks, and now I'm lost. No, let's go back to the beginning or to talk about you as a filmmaker, because you are one of the filmmakers. I mean, I would really be bold and to say unique in a way, because your films, especially Down Terrace, Kill It, Sightseers, and even this in a certain way, it's like it comes from a tradition of social realism, Ken Loach, Mike Leigh, but you always kind of have a look at it through genre lenses. Like Down Terrace is a gangster film, but it's social drama in a way. Kill List starts as a social drama, then it turns into a hitman film, and it ends like full-on horror. Sightseers, similar, serial killer comedy. So, what kind of inspired you, or is inspiring you to do something like this? Do you really still kind of want to stick to the tradition and have a look at it in a modern way, or?
I think it's that you say like it's Loach and Lee, but for me it's more Alan Clark is the person I look to, and that would have was a British TV director and cinema director who tragically died quite young, but before he really made a mark on stuff. But his movies that have that kind of socio-realist feel to them, but then are incredibly hard and harsh, and make you feel and drag you by the throat, you know. And I think, and I would look to Cassavetes as well, more than Mike Leigh, you know. I think that it's about, for me, it's like finding that emotion and bringing it to the surface, and kind of, you know, you find something as raw as you can, whether that's a performance thing or whether that's an image or a editing technique or whatever. So that's more where I come from, I think. And some of it is that, you know, I wanted to make genre movies, but I didn't want to make films about films. I didn't want to make copies of other genres. I didn't want to make another crime film that was like a load of other crime films. I wanted to make a specific crime film, but I wanted it to feel like it was in a world that I knew, with the characters that felt real to my own life experience, not like characters from films. And I think that's a problem with genre, where it just becomes a copy of a copy of a copy. And now we're so far down the line from where this stuff originated from that it's all can become quite tepid, you know. So yeah, that's where that stuff comes from. And also it's that if you use realistic performances and realistic environments, then the things that you enjoy about genre can hit home harder, because you've invested in believing in the characters. If you just start, because like if you do a horror film, like the idea behind a lot of American horror films is that you do something really, really violent at the beginning and horrible, and then you flash back or you go back to another set of characters, and then you have the build up, and then something horrible happens again later on, or every 10 minutes. But if you do that, what you do is you let the audience off the hook, because you say, this is a horror film, so, you know, it's none of this is real. But if you start with reality, and then you slowly draw them into stuff that's more extreme, then I think it's more hard hitting.
Okay, so maybe one last question before we give the platform to audience to ask a few questions if they're interested. Coming to your real beginnings, in a way, your start of the career, especially with Down Terrace, really reminds me, in a way, the career of Peter Strickland, who's going to have a film here tomorrow. And because he made his first film that he was kind of so angry with the fact that no one kind of trusted him, believed him. So he said, like, now or never. He took his own money, went to Transylvania and made a film. You did a similar thing in a way with Down Terrace. You said, like, I'm going to do it now, and I don't care about it, and I have to do it because it's important for me. So was it kind of a, you wanted, I mean, that's a silly question or a silly thing to ask, but was it all about kind of a creative pressure that you just needed to kind of break through in a way? I mean, you know what I'm trying to say, that...
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more that it was a weird... with film, it feels like the whole thing is set up that you feel like you need permission from people to make a movie, and there's so many ways of, like, you know, you go and you pitch stuff to people, and you go to either, you know, commercial cinema, or you go to commercial production companies, or you go to state funding bodies, and there's layers and layers and layers of people who are set up to tell you no, and to tell you that your idea is bad, and why their ideas are better, and yet they've never made any films. And I always could never understand that, you know. So I thought, well, what we should do is I'll make a film, and then if it's good, then life goes on, and if it's bad, then, you know, c'est la vie. And I think Peter had the same idea, and I think that, and that's what I would say to anybody who wanted to become a film director, is that they just need to just make a film, and basically then they just have to look at how much money they've got, or how little, and then make the film to fit that amount of money. So if you've got no money and you've got a mobile phone that can shoot HD, then you make a film with your friends in houses that, you know, that you can get into easily, and but you write a really, really good script, and there you go. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. You don't need to ask people whether your script is good enough, because they don't know any more than you, most likely.
And did it help? I mean, I promised the last question, so I was going to ask something more, but okay, I have to stick to my promise. So, are there any questions from the audience?
Come on. 2 fucking hours it took to fly here. There must be a question. Well, after that film, there's no questions. No, they're terrified.
Maybe I should ask some friends of mine who are here. You said you didn't like it, why? Okay, so I was going to ask something, but in your background, in a way, or simultaneously, you were doing advertisements, you were working in television. So did it help you kind of to kind of kickstart your career as a filmmaker? Or was it kind of independently, you know, just the flow of...
Well, it helped because I'd done a lot of work, and I had a lot of experience of how to make stuff. That was the main thing. I mean, it certainly didn't help making a movie. In a way, you know, that why I ended up having to make something was that I was doing a lot of comedy, and I talked to my agent and said I wanted to do some drama TV, and they said you can't direct drama TV unless you've done some drama, and it doesn't matter how many hours of comedy you've done, they won't let you do it. So you have to go and make a short film. You show them that, and then they might let you do it. And at that point, I was like, "What the fuck's that? That's stupid. I'll just go and make a film and just go round the whole thing." And so I managed to just go straight around the whole TV drama thing completely, and it was the best thing I ever did. I mean, Down Terrace only took like 8 days to shoot, and the post was 3 weeks, and it was done, and it went straight into festivals all over the world and got international distribution. It's like, you know, it's weird that your life can boil down to like 8 or 9 days of, you know, I'd spent 20 years thinking about it, but then, you know, the 8 days, yeah.
Okay, any questions still? So my very last one then.
We could keep me here for hours.
Yeah, like you stay here, but they will enjoy it because in 50 minutes the next film starts. So maybe we should cancel the screening.
We can't talk through it while it's on. What is the film?
Leslie Vernon, Behind the Mask.
Oh right, yeah. Oh, that's probably quite good. Down on the room now.
What would you say to a budding filmmaker?
I just did that one.
Yeah, you did that one, but let's ask you about your author signature, for example. Yeah, that's a good one.
Usually some incredibly crunching, the horrible piece of violence, followed by a cut to black.
Yeah.
And then a noise that goes this.
And at the end, you know, the end credit, checking the sound.
Yeah. That's if you do a short film, it would be that.
Maybe I have a question.
Oh my God.
Are you sure?
About this movie, I'm not sure if understand the end of the movie. It was the guys was alive again.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, my reading of it is...
Why zombies again?
No, they're not zombies. I think what it is that they're all, well, they're kind of, it would be a very loose definition of very like late entry into the genre, zombie genre, but I think that they're dead, pretty much. And that he keeps going through this cycle again and again and again, and that they're potentially aspects of the same man fighting, you know, but also fighting over the soul of the beginning of England, you know, what that moment, you know, at that point in history, it was, the whole country was starving, they were going to kill the king, they, basically, the king was meant to be like the voice of God on earth, and to kill God, which was they were about to do, it just completely destroys the whole kind of hierarchical system that they'd built up over, you know, 1,000 years. So it was a kind of fundamental moment where everything would grow out of that to become modern England. And yeah, and so they're kind of aspects of England fighting themselves again and again and again, and refining and refining and refining.
Okay, I think we should...
Has that explained?
Yeah. We should, I guess, wrap it up because we need to prepare this room for the next projection, next screening. So I thank Ben very much for coming and doing this talk.
Thank you for inviting me, and thanks for listening.
I thank you very much for being here, and hope to see you at the other films by Ben Wheatley, which we are going to screen in the upcoming days. Thank you very much.
Cheers.